Then we start. I think I ask you to mute your microphone. Yeah, whenever you speak, then of course do the opposite, not mute. And please don't speak through each other, because otherwise we have a problem about listening to you. We have a chat for all those participants we can't see now. There we can place questions. And yeah, of course, it's a fishbowl. And I'm very happy that I welcome you to the fishbowl 2. It's about sustainability and green banking. And we are very happy that we can discuss this today, because when we prepared the midterm festival or the payment week, like it is now, we spoke about the several topics we want to discuss, and sustainability was one of the main topics. We said, okay, we want to discuss about it. And we wanted to meet each other, of course, in the We Accelerate in Vienna, but that's not possible. And therefore, we decided to make this online format. And we are very happy that you are all here. And we will start the fishbowl by doing first an introduction by Gerald Gruber, and then follow up with discussion. And it's very welcome to say hello or to ask questions during the whole fishbowl. My name is Birgit Kraft-Kinz, and I coordinate and moderate this fishbowl today. And the initiative of PF19 is to build up a payment pioneers group coming up from Austria, but of course, not only Austria, we want to build it up in whole Europe to discuss payment topics and to innovate and collaborate about these topics to strengthen the economy of Europe and especially, of course, also Austria. And therefore, I hand over to Gerald Gruber, and you welcome us today. Thank you.
Thanks, Birgit. Good morning, everyone, and a very warm welcome to what is the third panel in our Payment Week. We've had one on Monday with politicians, Austrian politicians, to talk about regulatory stuff. We already discussed yesterday, and we have another one scheduled for tomorrow. So today it's going to be about green banking, sustainable banking, which you could call a buzzword if you want to be cynical, but it's actually a topic that's been around for like 60 years or so. And obviously it has all become more prominent in the last couple of years, driven by all the environmental and climate-related discussions happening outside. We have a very, very international group of people today. I think we span Germany, the UK, the Netherlands, and Austria here. So that is quite impressive, I think. And I thank everyone on the panel, on the fishbowl, for joining. I'm looking forward to a very, very interesting and diverse discussion, which is potentially going to spread a wide range of topics, because we try to keep the topic wide on purpose to be able to discuss it from as many angles as possible. And we have somebody from the payment industry, from the investment side, from a bank. You may ask what it has to do with, or whether it's a bit far away from payment itself, but I think the underlying idea of PF19 and the reason why we founded this platform about a year ago was to talk more about collaboration. Because and payment is a pass pro toto for cross-industry collaboration, where people from different industries, different sectors, private sector, public sector, actually come together to build something new. And the discussion today will show that also environmental aspects will ask and demand solutions that span different roles, different stakeholders, different types of stakeholders. So I think it's a very good fit. I want to introduce myself briefly, and I think everybody will do the same in a short statement afterwards. I'm currently head of business development with Bank. Bank is a Dutch challenger bank. We're one of the pure digital players around. And we've launched something we originally called the Green Card about 7 months ago, where we started planting trees on behalf of our customers. Which is one aspect of green banking. And I'm sure there's much, much more to explore today. So very welcome, everyone. I'm looking forward to a very diverse set of opinions and arguments.
Thank you very much, Gerald. Thank you very much. It's important that we make a picture, but I don't see Christian now. But a little bit later we will make a picture, and then we have to laugh into the camera, of course, so that it is nice and happy. We welcome our fishbowl panel. It's Gunita Bhasin from Speedinvest, Rau von Mastercard, Christoph Hantschk, goodbag, and Christoph Zinganell from Collective Energy. And I would like to hand over to you, Gunita, that you tell us what are you doing at Speedinvest, a very famous company in Austria in the B2B sector, because it's very innovative and very dynamic, and therefore it's very interesting what you're doing in the UK. And what is your mindset to sustainability? Not too long, but that we have an intro statement. It's short, please.
Thank you, Birgit. And hi, everyone. It's great to be here on this panel today. So I work in the FinTech investment team at Speedinvest. And my background is actually a mixture of startups, banking, and VC. So I started my career actually at Deutsche Bank in the corporate banking coverage team. So basically looking after UK FTSE 100, FTSE 250 clients for the corporate treasury suite, so cross-selling products to corporate treasurers. I then sort of, after doing that for a while, worked in the corporate strategy side of Deutsche, where I worked for basically looking at clients, products, and regions that the bank wants to be in. And after having done that for a while, I started to venture with my own idea of a startup. And it was not in the fintech space, which is where I'm in now. It was a direct-to-consumer startup, sort of more of a marketplace kind of company. But that's how I really got interested in venture capital. And working on that, I sort of ended up transitioning into the venture capital side of things, initially at actually Atomico, where I worked initially in the fundraising side for our circa $800 million fund. And after that, I moved into Speedinvest, which is where I work now on the fintech side of things. And at Speedinvest, we look at fintech, I would say, from quite a broad lens. So fintech obviously incorporates core finance, so banking, payments, lending, wealth management, but also the other elements of, for example, tech fin. So basically finance meets the digital side of things as well, and embedded finance as well. So that's kind of how we view the lens. In terms of green tech, I think this is a topic of personal interest to me. I think that this is a super important topic at the moment, and also one that I personally, out of interest, got involved with within Speedinvest as well, from our internal sort of green tech initiative, where we were looking at how we think about investment in sustainable companies. So yeah.
Thank you, Gunita. Thank you very much. Now I hand over to Christian Rau. Christian, please tell us, what are you doing at Mastercard, and what is the mindset to sustainability?
I hope you can hear me fine. I had to reshuffle from my PC to my mobile because somehow Chrome didn't like this. My name is Christian. I've been with the company for 8 years. I started off in Frankfurt in product, and I'm now the country manager for Mastercard in Austria. And I guess everybody knows Mastercard, but just for the record, I mean, we don't give out cards ourselves. We work with banks and fintechs and all sorts of players who issue cards in a franchise kind of mode. And we are a technology company that basically makes all of these things happening. And of course, for us, it is also an important topic because, I mean, we are a global citizen, so we take that responsibility very seriously. But we also see that our customers, so the banks and also the consumers take more and more an interest in this topic. And when it comes to choosing, their partners or payment methods of choice, the green aspect also is a relevant one. So that's why we also look at that.
Thank you, Christian. Now we look and laugh into the camera and make a picture, please. Just a short. Thank you. Was it okay, Brandon? Because I forgot it after Gunita. And now I hand over to Christoph Hantschk. Please tell us about your position, about goodbag, and also your mindset to sustainability and green banking.
You're on mute.
Ich höre dich nicht, Christoph. I can't hear you.
Okay, we're starting now. So glad to be here.
Now.
My name is Christoph. I'm one of the founders of goodbag. Goodbag is a smart, reusable shopping bag that connects to the phone of the user through a free available app and enables them to plant a tree or collect plastic waste out of the ocean or receive a discount to save money every time they reuse their bag. So we basically enable people to do good by reusing their bag and tracking their impact. I'm a behavioral economist, and we're using basically behavioral economics and instant gratification, real-time feedback to incentivize people to protect the environment in their everyday life. How do I stand towards sustainability? For me, it's out of the question that sustainability is the only way we can move forward. I feel that as individuals, we have to ask ourselves, what do we consume? How do we affect the planet with it? And why do we consume it? And I mean, I see this is already happening. More and more consumers are looking for sustainable choices, especially young consumers, millennials. They are more aware than ever about sustainability. And I think sustainability, it's not longer a CSR campaign. It's a business strategy. And sustainability also sells. And I truly believe that creating impact is the future of entrepreneurship. And I'm also 100% convinced that in a not so long future, the majority of successful companies will have at least elements of social entrepreneurship and impact embedded in their culture, and creating impact will be an essential part of their business model. So, because I feel it's essential. As an economist, generating money is always representative of generating value, and I can see anything as valuable for us as humanity to make sure that we survive on this planet. And yeah, I think sustainability is not only essential for our survival, but it's also good for business. Yeah.
We will discuss about this business strategy, sustainability, but first I want to hand over to Christoph Zinganell.
Hello, very warm welcome from my side. I'm Christoph, CEO of Collective Energy, a young company established in the end of 2015, I guess. Yes, this is right. So we will have our 5-year anniversary this December. And the whole idea started to making renewable energy and the transition to renewable energy affordable, accessible for everyone out there, especially in Austria. Only about 10% of the people out there making classical investments. So we had the idea to make this area accessible to everyone out there. This has another big impact as well, because the people out there having no idea about energy. It's the most important resource at the moment for us. Imagine 5 hours without energy, everyone will go crazy out there. But it's so automatically that electricity just comes out of the plug, and it's cheap, it's everywhere. but we have no direct contact with it. What is a kilowatt hour? How much do I pay for energy a year? Most people out there don't know. So we want to connect these two things very directly and giving an access to normal people out there. And this is what we are doing in our core business, and which leads us now to the tokenization of energy, direct connection of investments to impact, return on investment, not only in form of euro money, maybe as well CO2 reduction could be a nice added value for the future, as we know. And this is the whole area where we are focused on since 5 years. And yeah, the vision is impact investing in a bigger scale for us as well.
Thank you, Christoph. I'm excited about listening about new models, and Martin told me that you have really big examples. But first, I want to hand over. Gerald, you told about your job and about your role within PF19. But now I want to hand over to Max and Martin, that they tell what was the motivation to found PF19. And Max, what are you doing when you're not within a group of PF19?
Oh, what am I doing? I talk a lot about innovations. I talk a lot about digital habits and strategies with my clients. That's mostly filling my day. And for the Payment Festival, I think my role is to give an impulse about innovation, to give an impulse on what comes next. So we are living in a digital world today. The disruption is spreading around every side of our economy, and I want to talk about the disruption, what will be tomorrow. So I think that one of the main reasons we are here is to make things better for our economy on the one side, so that we can, as a country in Austria or as the European citizen, can make things better in the area of payment. But on the other hand, and this is our topic today, how we can achieve that innovation can make our planet a little bit better, so that our children will have a green planet, or at least a good planet where they can live on.
Yesterday we discussed about instant payment and about your customers who were forced, a little bit also forced to digitalization because of Corona and all the developments in the world. You said the Hut brennt. There are many things which are coming up. That's one of your roles within PF19. I learned that you tell us about the next steps which are coming up and are really, and the companies or the economy is forced to. Do you agree that the companies are a little bit excited or are moving from into digitalization and focus on this item?
No, mostly I have to disagree. That's the problem. They're not excited about. They're afraid of changing things. They always see a black hole behind it. It's like a black box for them. What will come, and they can't see the opportunities. And I think regarding the topic of today, I totally agree with Christoph. It's with both Christophs that there is a wide area of opportunities when it comes to sustainability, when it comes to the everyday climate action, and you can connect it with the habits of the users. So if it is convenient, for example, to change your energy plan, and you can do it by one click, and the payment behind it, you don't have to change your bank account details, etc. Then you will do it, and more you can change your habits and so you can change things for the whole planet. So I think it's more important that we, in every area, we make it more convenient for the users and for the customers to change things so that they can change things.
Okay, I want to hand over to Martin. Martin, you invest much time into PF19, and you know very much about all the topics we have. What is your motivation, and why did you decide to say, okay, we focus on sustainability?
There are two reasons for that. So the first one was from the stakeholder groups that we talked to, and there was a specific angle also that we will learn today, I assume, from Gerald and Christian, as one of the best practices, how to change classic banking approaches into really a new world in the next decade basically, and to offer consumers new propositions. But from the industry perspective, when I go back to my bread and butter job, out of the next 5 huge projects that we currently tackle, 3 of them are directly combined to the topic of sustainability, CO2 reduction, and directly go exactly into the panel that we discussed today. So I see exactly what Christoph Hantschk has said, that today's business opportunities, at least in my small bubble, definitely get on top, this cherry on the top, that you think about, okay, does it not only create money value, but does it also create impact and sustainable value? Because there is a huge demand from a huge group of people. I cannot say how many, it depends on the industry focus, but the pressure from the population to ask questions like, when I invest my money, when I give it to a bank, what actually happens with my funds? That was never a topic in the past. So basically, when I talked to my parents, when I talked to my peer group, everybody was like, okay, do you know this bank? When I put my money there, I get 4%, and that's super good, or whatever kind of money, yeah? Those things partly have changed. So nowadays, discussions go further, where people then ask, yeah, but which bank is it? Do you know where the bank is located, for example? Do you know where the headquarters of the bank is? Do you know what they do with your funds? And there, I'm allowed to put a nice greeting from Jakob, who wasn't able to join us today. So he's the co-founder and CEO of Tomorrow Bank, who is also one German-based bank who invests hugely in this topic. So he is a former co-founder of Lemonade or Charity. If you know those companies, if you go to your local grocery store in Austria, at least, you see it in the shelves where he donated and made a really, really cool business model to bring people the pleasure of a good drink, but also do good stuff by buying that and drinking that. And I think that's a good entry point for today's panel. And people like him inspired us here at PF19 also to put a focus on this topic and go further with that stream, definitely. To close off 2 streams, so there is the peer group putting pressure on that, and I think the market also has a huge demand in that field.
Thank you, Martin. But you didn't tell us about your job when you're not with us and at PF19. What are you doing at Mobile Pocket?
My bread and butter company, so Blue Source, is focused on mobile only for around 20 years, so 2 decades, and we focus on digitalizing the loyalty schemes of the world, basically. So getting rid of the plastic cards, bringing those into the smartphones, and then we are part of the user journey of payment, basically. So banks use our technology across Europe, but also fintechs and MNOs like Vodafone, Deutsche Telekom. Those are our core customers. And there is also one reason for them: they want to reduce plastic. That's a good reason for end consumers to use the products.
Thank you. Now we want to speak about this cooperation between Bank and Mastercard. Bank is a very new bank, as I know, and Mastercard is a big international company, and they do a collaboration about cards. Right. Could you explain us about this cooperation? And then we hand over to Christian about the motivation of Mastercard, of this global player, to cooperate with a small bank in the Netherlands.
Sure, I can talk about that. Just to put it into perspective, right? It's not a one-to-one cooperation we're talking about. It's two companies who found out about half a year ago that they were having the same intentions in initiatives. Both came up separately, and that it could make sense to join, right? So obviously we're the much smaller player here. Bank is indeed pretty young. I think close to 5 years old now. As I said earlier, a purely digital bank, and we were always driven by the idea of doing banking differently. So our founder is, that's his vision back in 2012, or briefly after the last financial crisis, was there has to be a way to do that banking differently. And he founded Bank on the premise of doing things the end user, our customers, would want and make life easy for them. And that's just two crucial aspects to that. And out of these ideas came an initiative about 3/4 of a year ago, where we came up with what we call the green card, which attaches planting trees to spending, which is one of the simplest things you can do, frankly, right? You promise to do something good for a specific customer behavior. You make it easy for people to do something that makes sense to the environment. And yes, you can make an argument that it also makes sense to help them with their consciousness. Yeah. But it's a very simple activity tied to a certain level of spend on their card. We plant trees. And back in January, we figured out that Mastercard is running a global initiative. And Christian is talking more about that. And we got in touch. I mean, I do have my connections from my past role, and we are now one of the founding participants in this initiative. We have, with the overall intention to plant, I don't know, put in a very huge number. Christian, I'm sure can give you the exact number. I really forgot it, 1 billion trees or something like that globally. So that's the context.
Thank you. Then we hand over to Christian. And the initiative, why does a big company as Mastercard cooperates with Bank, and what's about this green card? And
So first of all, I mean, we cooperate with a lot of players. These classical banks, you know, whether in Austria it's Erste Bank or Raiffeisen, and of course there's more in these fintechs or new banks, challenger banks, whatever you want to call them. And I think for us, this plurality and the breadth of choice is important for customers, because we're a technology company and we want to offer consumers wide choices when it comes to making safe, simple, and secure payments wherever. And I think for us it's very refreshing to see the likes of Bank or there are others come with this attitude of let's make banking a bit more like Spotify and Netflix and less like a machine. And come from the user experience, because typically, you know, payment is not very sexy. And we like these kind of players that take a more user-centric approach, like Bank does, because we're in B2B environment. We don't give up, so we depend on the likes of Gerald to turn our technology into a good product. That's why we like with Bank. Why do we engage in these kind of green initiatives? As I said, I think there's two reasons to it. One, of course, as a global company and a global citizen, if you will, we recognize a certain responsibility, and we are very willing to honor that. But also we see that we are more, let's say, questioned or scrutinized in a constructive way. So Mastercard, what are you doing? What is your client print? And when we're pitching with big banks, this is something that comes up. So I think it was Christoph H saying, you know, this topic moves from being a sideline kind of stuff into your core business. I wouldn't call it core business with that yet, but it takes more and more strategy, definitely. And maybe to take a step back on what Gerald was saying, we founded this, the Priceless Planet Coalition, and the target is to plant 100 million trees in 5 years' time. And we partner with bank, but also with companies that are not necessarily banks. So this of London, the Transport for London, so the operator of the subway, American Airlines, also big retailers. And we just want to provide that platform where companies can engage and make their contribution. Because the Council for, I need to remember the name, the IPCC, Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change, if we want to stick to this 1.5 degree temperature raise by 2030, we need 1 hectares of trees. So that really puts our very modest contribution into context, because we want to, work or continue to work and live in an environment that is hospitable not only to us in Central Europe, but also to parts of the world. We need to make this change, and we want to provide that platform. And again, it's not that we want to make divs of other banks like bank or other players redundant. It's basically a platform where we invite everybody, and we work with 2 professional companies that help us with, planting the right trees at the right places. There's details to be observed, and also do a proper, let's say, scientific follow-up. Is this really working? Are we putting the money where we have the highest return on climate improvement, if you will? Yeah, it's a very interesting initiative for us. We started this late 2019, and think I'm to see how this evolves, and also to see how people react to this.
Thank you, Christian. I want to ask.
I don't hear you.
Birgit, can you talk? That we are sure that we can hear you.
Your picture was frozen, but we heard everything, I think. I want to ask a question to Gerald. Gerald, what was the motivation to plant trees and not to invest into photovoltaic infrastructure or something like that? Did you do a study, or did you ask your consumers, or was it just an idea?
No, as I said earlier, right? Bank, we have a pretty strong online and user community. We keep interacting with them in terms of, or with regards to features they'd be interested in. The user community influences the features we provide in our app. And one topic that came up last year was this. The environmental aspect. Bank, before that, already offered as one of the first banks the option to decide where your money goes to some extent. So if you have a deposit at bank, you could make some choices on whether you wanted in which areas you wanted it to be invested in. And then the demand actually became visible that people want to do something simple and good for the environment. I mean, that was the original driver, and we're all driven by what our end consumers want. We are not, by definition, a bank focused on sustainability. We're not, there's other players around that take this concept from a very, very different angle. We just look and listen to our users, and what we're doing is basically an example of what's the demand out there. And we've heard that before, so people want to have a simple way of doing something sensible for the environment. And that's how we came up with the tree planting. We also have our tree planting partner, which we've sourced. And we brought that into this joint initiative, we've by now, and it's only half a year, planted like, I think 500,000 trees already. And we're going to get to 1 million by the end of the year. So the 100 million MasterCard pledges should actually be very, very easy to reach, frankly, because if a small bank like us can do 1 million, then 100 million should be a piece of cake.
Okay. Then I want to ask Collective Energy or Goodbag. Do you also focus on different kind of impact tools? Also look onto planting trees or something like that? Goodbag first.
I mean, yeah, we offer our users basically 2 options to double their impact once they use our bags. So every time they use the bag, they can either plant a tree or they can choose to collect plastic waste out of the ocean. We initially started with planting trees. So for every bag that we sell or that are resold in the retail stores that participate with us, we plant 1 tree. And on the other hand, every time people reuse these bags in participating stores, they can plant additional trees. And so far, we have planted over 100 trees. Not all are visible on our website yet, but the trees that are visible on our website, they are related to the scans of the bags in the stores. The other ones are related to the bags that we actually sold. So we planted trees with reforest. Why do we plant trees? Because trees are the most powerful weapon against climate change overall, and there's, I think this is a fact. 1 tree fully grown can collect up to 300 kilograms of CO2, especially mangroves are great. This is why we also work together in areas where the trees grow that absorb the most CO2. I think when you talk about planting trees, it's also very important that you not only count the numbers of the trees, but also the quality of the trees, because there is a lot of differentiation. A tree is not a tree, especially it depends what kind of tree is planted, if it's fully grown or if it's just a seedling. Not every seedling survives. So I think there's a really important factor that we have to consider. And I think this is what separates actual creating impact from greenwashing, that you care about the impact. And I mean, 100 million trees, that can be really a lot. And I think this is a great goal. Our goal is to plant 1 billion trees, but it's also it's the core of our business. And when I said before that, I meant it will be the core in the future. I didn't say that right now it's the core of the business. Obviously now it's still not there, but I believe we're getting there. Yeah, and we're also now opening up our solution, making it available globally. So by the end of the summer, people will be able to use their Goodbag in all stores worldwide. So no matter if they're a partner of us or not. So this will also open up consumer brands, etc., to partner with us. So to communicate their efforts through an interactive experience for the customer. And this is becoming more and more important because, as Forbes recently said, 88% of consumers want brands and companies to help them protect the environment and do something against climate change and plastic pollution. And this is actually where we step in, because we enable brands and consumers to work together, and we communicate it in a really interactive way, which is also powerful towards the brands, because in the end, brands and organizations and companies, they want to attract customers. And the customers of the future, they care so deeply about sustainability that for the long-term survival, it will be essential for them to, in a believable way, act together with their customers so they get the trust of the customers and also the money in the end. So this is our take about the trees and also about the long-term strategy about sustainability from brands and how they can actually become better in becoming more sustainable. And I see a lot of great progress in this area. I mean, if banks like new challenger banks adopt it, like Bunk, there's a green bank account. I would be really interested in the adoption of the demographics, because we see when it comes to investing, we also see millennials are about they have a 15% higher interest in investing in sustainability. And when it comes to adoption, the gap is even larger. I mean, the gap is getting closer, but I think millennials are 20% higher in following up their interest in actually investing in sustainability. So this is why it would be also interesting to know about the demographics of the usage of that. Yeah, maybe we can talk about that later.
Okay, now Christian is here again, and sorry, Christoph, I want to hand over to Mastercard again. Mastercard did many initiatives during the COVID-19, and for me the question came up, what is Mastercard doing for the sustainability or the climate targets from Paris? Could you tell a little bit about your initiatives as a global company? Because you, of course, do things when they are rational, when they are the consumers ask for it, and are you really do many things in sustainability or not so many things?
Yeah, it's definitely a topic, and I wouldn't necessarily connect that to the COVID pandemic. I mean, the COVID pandemic, our focus was really to help and sustain the local economies and allow people to still shop while maintaining their distance, basically. And I mean, I'm happy to speak about that too. But when it comes to what are we doing to minimize our carbon footprint. One thing that we're doing is we're part of a initiative that's called Re100. We're basically also a group of leading companies, and if you go to their website, you will see a lot of household names and global corporates that we're saying we want to source 100% of our energy from renewable sources. Also, when it comes to, for example, the sort of office buildings that we occupy, be it our own office buildings or be it rented space that we use in our offices worldwide, we put in an emphasis or an effort on selecting buildings that are energy efficient, maybe even energy surplus buildings. So we're doing these things. We're also screening our suppliers, and I think our target is to screen 85% of our suppliers for their when it comes to purchase volume. What we source basically from vendors, to screen them for their respective CO2 footprint, to make sure whatever sort of economic initiatives we cascade in the value chain, we try to be as CO2 efficient as possible. So, like I said, it's definitely something that touches our organization in a lot of departments.
Thank you, Christian. Now I want to hand over to Gunita, because Christoph Hantschk spoke about investors and the motivation of investors in giving their money into sustainable companies. But do you also focus on planting trees, or what is the focus to do as a big company like Speedinvest?
Thanks, Birgit. So I guess for us, we look at this from different perspectives. So because we're a pan-European seed fund, we see a lot of different business models that are, retail banking is one of them, but there are a lot of other ones that we see as well. And I'm happy to go into some of those business models as well. But I think first it's just really important to also reiterate, which is something that we've all been saying about why we look at sustainable investing and why we look at sustainable fintech in particular. So, what we call green tech, like why is this so important? And I think one thing is to understand is, particularly from a financial perspective, is that when you are as banking clients, where the concern is that currently money is, for example, being put into bank accounts that could be used to finance companies that are proliferating global warming or harming the planet in other ways. There's also, so that's one side of things, and this is why there's startups that have emerged to basically address the lack of transparency in the banking sector around ESG. But I think there's also another side of things, which is around offsetting. And here you're seeing the pressure for companies to reduce their carbon footprint is rising, right? And customers are demanding more sustainable approaches from their brands. Regulators are trying to plan regulation to make carbon emissions and pricing more mandatory. And at the same time, consumers are seeking a more sustainable lifestyle, and the environmental impact has become more important as a decision criteria. And all of this is happening while, we're in the midst of COVID, there's been economic disruption, there's social unrest, and the climate hasn't stopped changing, right? So we still have the risk of climate change. And I think what I'm trying to say is that as we emerge from lockdown, there is going to be a need for organizations to think about how they manage all components of environmental, social, and governance. So against that background, the concept of how do we think about this as investors from an investment perspective? I think for us, it's really important to understand the business model and how it's helping individuals in a targeted way. And by that, I mean that it's really important to understand to what extent a sustainable startup is beneficial to the environment. If it talks about climate change regulations that make their product necessary, what is the specific impact that those regulations are having? How willing are customers to pay for such a solution, right? And also from a market perspective, it's important to understand the size of the opportunity and also looking at the broader competitive landscape. So I guess what I'm trying to say is we definitely, when we invest in green tech, I think it's really important because these startups have positive impacts on the protection of the environment. However, we don't just trade off sustainability for other financial metrics. And so it's not enough just to add a layer of sustainability to what you're doing as a startup. And so when we look at this as an investor, we will also consider the commercial perspective. How do the startups acquire customers? What is their hope to getting customer attention? So I think that is quite important. And then I would say that, especially with COVID right now, there's somewhat more of an additional lens into whether startups would survive at sort of the medium-term COVID impact. And you see sometimes in pitch decks from startups, you'll see a new slide on COVID. And I think this is a function of things. I think partly it's a reaction of VCs to the COVID medium-term impact, but I think founders wanting to address it as well. But I think that ultimately we're still longer-term investors, and so although there's uncertainty that will impact how we think about things, we still look at this from a long-term perspective. And so when we think about COVID, it is something that is currently causing disruption amongst other factors, but we would still assess this equally. We'd still weigh the concerns equally and remember the broader picture of how the startup is impacting the climate, what is the commercial perspective, and how is it impacting consumers as well. So that's kind of how we think about it. And we've actually seen a lot of different business models within sustainable fintech more broadly. So obviously retail banking being one of them, but if you want, I can go into some of the other business models that we're seeing as well, if that would be of interest.
Thank you, Gunita. I want to hand over to Christoph Zinganell. Maybe you can give us a little bit of insight into your business model, as Gunita told us before, and also about your projects. Hi.
Sorry. Now you should hear me. Before I go into the deeper details of the project, I want to have a broader approach to the topic as well about sustainability in general, which should always focus on the three pillars of ecological approach, economical, and social. And if every company or every project would rely on this, we wouldn't have these problems facing right now. And as well, the crisis in 2008, 2009, and so on would not happen that way. So most people always connect only the ecological part with sustainability. But the term of sustainability, a core pillar, is an economical part as well. So if banks would have taken this into account from the very beginning, they would have reached much more security and stability. And this is a thing they can take with them into the future, I think, and they are doing this. And this leads me to the point, the internalization of external costs. This is the point why the cheap stuff out there is not the most healthy and the most ecological usually. We need to transform our way and behavior of economy, that doing something good should be beneficial and not be punished the way it is at the moment. Think on organic products, think on train tickets and all this stuff. Everything which is really ecological is always more expensive. And this is where collective energy comes in. We want to create a situation where people benefit if they are doing something good. And this is the best way that we can do now, because you're getting no interest for your money on your bank account. And this is where we have a good possibility to give a nice indeed interest to people out there by doing something good. Our projects are focusing exactly on this point, that we can give the people out there a much better interest by doing something good. For example, one big project is starting tomorrow. Yes, it will be tomorrow. We're having a crowd investing campaign for Austrian brewery, where the people out there can invest up to 5,000 euro each, and the idea is to collect nearly €500,000 to create and enable a PV solar plant for this brewery. As reward, you're getting 4.9% interest. Is exactly the volume of their beer. So it's always connected, of course, with marketing and activity, and has a great marketing approach as well, because it gives the people, the customer out there, the chance to make their beer directly more sustainable with their investment. So they create a very emotional binding with the customer with this project, and at the same time it's a very safe investment, because these breweries and these companies are working together, a very old family driven companies like this, and it's 150 years old, so the people trust in these people, they trust in this company maybe more than in a bank nowadays. And we could see this 2008, 2009. Security is maybe not always the highest thing in the end of the day when it comes to a crash. So people are losing the money at all. If I want to lose my money, or I will lose my money at all, maybe I want to lose it in an ecological way. This could be maybe the better way. As a next step, we will tokenize such projects as well. So it's getting more secure, first of all, and you can directly connect with the daily activities, what your money is doing on a live. You can see live every day which CO2 reduction your money is gaining with the tokenization of, for example, PV solar plants. And this is where we need to go. We need to make it more beneficial for the people out there and more secure. And we can see really a big demand on such projects out there, especially in the renewable energy field, because most of the people out there can't do it on their own, especially think on the cities. It's very hard to install a PV solar plant on your flat or on your balcony. First things coming up here, but usually the house is not belonging to yourself. So we need to give the people out there some tools where they can be part of such important things like the energy transition to renewables, and the people will take it. We have another model. We have 3 different financing models for renewable projects, and especially the monetary one is booming that much that the projects are always sold out in between like 24 to 48 hours. So there's a really big demand out there that people getting these tools in their hand, and this is our perspective of what we can say.
Thank you. Christoph Hantschk had a question, please.
Yeah, I'm not sure. Should we just type them? Well, I speak it out now. So it's great to hear that the Speedinvest is really doing a lot of efforts regarding sustainability. I would be really interested in, do you already report to your investors and your shareholders the impact that your startups generate? And if you do, how do you do it? And if you don't, do you plan to do that in the future? And do you see an increase of your investors asking for you doing this report?
Yeah, it's a really good question. Actually, because before Speedinvest, when I was at Atomico on the fundraising side, I was more closer to this in terms of how Atomico looked at fundraising and how they reported back to investors. And I think I noticed this trend broadly on, yes, investors do look for sustainability, and it is an increasing focus. At Speedinvest in particular, we report on a number of metrics. I think at the moment we don't, for example, say specifically that this is our, for example, some companies, what they do is they offset their footprints. They actually, as funds, try to be carbon neutral, and they'll talk about how specifically they are being carbon neutral. So they actually offset their footprint and they report that back to investors. Now, that's not a specific thing that we do. I think it's something that we are, that could be coming up in the future, though. Not necessarily on the offsetting point, but sharing with investors, especially as it becomes an increasing focus.
Geredet had also a question to you, Gunita.
Yeah.
I put it in the chat, but I can actually also, of course, ask it.
Yes.
Do you have any data to see to tell us whether your green, sustainable investments how they fare now compared to more traditional ones? I mean, I know there's been a lot of research done in the past, and when I was at business school, the outcome still was that traditional ones would outperform the sustainable ones. But I was wondering if that has changed by now.
Yeah, it's a really good question. I think this is the sort of ever-long debate about whether green banking or green investments do better than traditional investments. I think that it's inconclusive is the short answer, because sometimes green investments, depending on how you measure it, sometimes you could some studies have shown and some funds have shown who are specifically measuring that they show that their investments don't necessarily outperform, but they either outperform or are at least the same as other investments. So they're showing that green investments do as well as other investments. And I think other funds show that, or at least historically, they used to show that green investments, if you focus on sustainability, you're losing another element of things. And so therefore, it doesn't, there's a trade-off, between the sustainability and financial returns. I would say for Speedinvest in particular, because we haven't measured for our companies, whether specifically for a long enough, I think you need to do this for a long time period as well for it to be conclusive. So we haven't measured for a long enough time period how conclusive these results are. So I think it's difficult to say. But I think I just would like to reiterate that sustainability is important for us, but it's not that we are trading it off for other, financial returns. So we're not. So we're very conscious of greenwashing. We're very conscious of companies that say that they may be having or falsely market what they may be doing for the environment. But we're also very conscious of the importance of this. So I think it's just about having balance and thinking about how do you invest in a company that has a positive impact without giving up the other side of the commercial viability of their business proposition. And that's something that we're basically working on by our approaches. Let's look at them from an equal perspective, and let's not trade off returns for sustainability.
it would be an interesting question to ask, and this is for everybody, because you said there is a trade-off, right? What kind of boundary conditions or environmental, regulatory conditions, for example, would have to change to level the playing field more, right? I mean, I don't have an answer for that. It's just, shouldn't we think about what needs to change in the overall playing field to make greener environmentally conscious, sustainable investments more likely to succeed? In terms of, a simple thing is road pricing, fuel pricing, these things.
I have a view on this, and then, I guess, obviously, it's for, then we should all discuss as well. I think my view, personally, is that could be from a regulatory perspective. The change would be to basically avoid false marketing and false representation. And I think this is happening. So I think the EU Parliament, recently was announcing specific rules on how they're going to measure when you're doing a sustainable investment, how they're going to measure that. And so they had specific criteria against which they measure what is green tech. And I think that can be helpful to have that sort of level of change, because that way, if there's a regulatory consideration, then maybe startups will be more careful about trying to introduce a green angle just to get funding, I guess. Yeah.
Christian, you wanted to say something?
I think one key factor is that basically cascades through a lot of our economic activities, that we don't price for externalities, both horizontal and across time appropriately. I think if, for example, you really, put an appropriate CO2 tax, and I know that's a super heavy discussion and that has been going on for quite some time, but if you put that on items, then I think it wouldn't be possible to buy a t-shirt, that has been produced in Bangladesh from Egyptian cotton and then shipped to Europe, and you buy that for €6 or something. That wouldn't be possible. And I think with a lot of, if you want to achieve fair economic circumstances, if you price for externalities, and if you also price along the time axis in terms of what's the impact on subsequent generations, then I think you would have a fairer game, and also more sustainable companies quite likely wouldn't suffer that economic disadvantage of having to incur a higher cost base. I know that's on a rather higher superficial level, but I think that's what a lot of discussions boil down to.
Martin, you had a question?
Yeah, I just wanted to basically ask from different angles, all four of you. The question is, do people in this field of sustainable banking, I think Gunita touched it a bit base, do you need to fight for funds, or is it like a green card to get funding or to get support? I mean, it also goes out to Christian at Mastercard. If you have great projects where you say this goes into the sustainability direction, is it more likely to gain fund support inside of the corporation, and also for the startups here or for the mid-mature companies? Like, is it something when you go to people like Speedinvest and you say, we have now 3 business opportunities, we are the ones that invest into sustainability, all 3 are equals, is your chance to get funds? Do you have issues actually with business models? Do people question it very strongly and say, it's super good what you do, like the normal sentences that everybody hear and said, you guys are awesome, you guys are great, we can talk soon, and then they go with their 1 million euros to another project where they simply get a better return on investment. So is there this type of green card that helps you when you fight for funds? Is this something helpful or not?
Gunita?
Yeah, it's a really good question. So my view is that there shouldn't need to be a green card, because maybe it's a bit idealistic, but when we don't have to fight for funds, we fight for startups. We fight for the startups that are doing things that are fundamentally disruptive, that are innovating, and that are creating new ideas. And basically, when there is a positive environmental impact, we also fight for them. And so as an example, for example, we invested, and this also goes to our question on how do you avoid kind of what we were discussing a little bit about how do you avoid false marketing and false representation. I think data is really helpful here as well. So we recently invested in a startup in this space. We didn't have to fight for funds because it was exceptional from the criteria that we look for as investors. It was a strong team. There was a pressing problem that they were addressing, and you could see the commercial viability of their proposition as well. And what they're doing is basically is a company called Silvera, and basically they're evaluating carbon offsets. So the idea, of carbon dioxide, when you are offsetting, you have to actually verify whether carbon dioxide is being removed from the atmosphere as a result of the project, right? And sellers need to prove the offset project is doing what it claims to doing, and buyers also need to prove that, for a reporting perspective, that what they're offsetting is going to a positive environmental sort of contribution. And so what they're doing, they're using data. So they're using machine learning and satellite data to track the performance of carbon offsets. And so they're building an API that uses satellite data to verify changes in carbon stocks and assets. And I guess I don't want to go into the technicalities of it right now, but I think what I'm trying to say is that because this is so interesting, and you can see how it's a specific targeted approach to solving a problem, it's not something you need to fight for, because you can see the business model, you can see the business case around investing in the startup, and we don't need to fight for it because it's addressing such a specific targeted problem that we can see it being commercially viable.
Okay. It sounds good to fight for startups and not for funds. That's good. Yeah, Gerald, do you have something to this connection? Or?
Yeah. I just want to make a short add-on to what Gunita just said, and I can only confirm what she's been saying from the other side, because offering planting trees to our users does not get us any funding any easier, unless it is a fundamental part of the business model and it's proven that it adds to our user base and growth, right? And that's the only thing that counts in my point of view. So the economic model needs to be solid, and if the economic or sustainable aspect adds to that in a credible way, then it will get you the funds. Just putting it on top as a layer on the cake doesn't help. So I can confirm what Gunita said from the other side.
Totally agree. I think being green doesn't make you any more or less likely to get funding in our view. At least that's how we view it. Yeah.
Max, you had a question to Mastercard economy. May you repeat your question, and then Christian could tell us about this project or cooperation.
Yeah.
I can't hear you. I'm
sorry, Mike. It was just me.
No, not you. Not you, Christian. It was a problem of Max. I can't hear you. No. Then I read or say the question.
Just for those.
Maybe Christian, you tell us about the economy.
The economy. Indeed, that's a Swedish company that we work with. I'm not sure whether you hear me now.
Yes, we hear you. Yes.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
There is this card, if you will, of this product where you can connect your spending or consumption, whatever you want to call it, to a predefined or pre-agreed environmental footprint. So basically, I mean, everything we consume, even if it's digital goods, has an ecological footprint, a CO2 footprint. And this product basically helps you to sort of stay on top of your consumption, not only from an economic point of view in terms of the euro or dollars or whatever you spend, but also in terms of the environmental footprint you create. I find it a very interesting model, and honestly, to the best of my knowledge, I don't know any numbers in terms of how many users we have and these kind of things, and we are, as a company, obviously kind of concerned about the privacy and data of our customers. So I can't give you any information about how they are faring in terms of users and spend and so on and so forth. But the idea I find very appealing, even though I guess some people might call it counterintuitive that MasterCard actually encourages people to reflect on, do I really need this? Do I really need to buy this? I think it's a good way to use that digital payment channel to sort of enrich it, not only with data that we typically have, you can see where you did purchase something in Google Maps or something, or you see the transaction amount, but it really takes that digital stream that we create with our payment record, basically, and we connect it and enrich it with the environmental footprint. And I'm really interested to see how this evolves and whether this builds out to other markets. They have 2 card products with us live now, and also excited to see where this is going.
Super. Maybe you can hear me now?
Not sure.
Do you hear me now? Yes? Okay. So I think it's a really new way to think how a company or a bank can help the planet to achieve tomorrow. So not very, very well. Another question, so in general, for maybe Gunita or for Bank, friends of mine, they have an initiative called Damn Plastic. Yes. There are 3 girls located in Salzburg. They try to achieve the goal that plastic will not be longer part of our daily lives, and they try to help supplier to get us on the point of sale. So my question is, instead of planting trees, wouldn't it be more effective to help such initiatives to grow? Because there are so many people, so many initiatives. They're willing to fight. They're willing to fight for their goals. And I guess the money that you spend on trees, it's good, but maybe it would be better to give it to such initiatives. And I think that could be a business model at the end of the day. And you have stories to tell. You have a community around them that will help your own goals. So maybe that's a question. So in general.
Yeah, right. Do you want to answer about the alternatives instead of investing into planting trees?
There is quite a lot of options you have these days, right? In our case, it actually really was a simple decision, because we heard back from our users what they would prefer to do or us to do, and we just did that. But yes, obviously, again, I think it makes a difference on whether you do something in something green or environmentally friendly because you want to do exactly that, or you do it as part of your offering to your end users and you want somebody else to do it. Yeah. So that's why we are demand driven in this aspect. And so for us, this was an easy decision. But yes, you could do different stuff. And I know there are other banks out there who engage in reducing ocean plastic with a similar logic behind it. Yeah. So the good thing these days is I think that there are so many options around to do something meaningful that you have a choice and see what best fits with your user base or your customer base and your model.
Gunita, you are addressed very often. You wanted to make some comments, please?
Yeah, I think I actually this is back to my previous point on business models, because there's lots of different business models. Planting trees is one of them. I think before that, obviously one startup or one company can't do everything, right? So you have to think about what's your approach going to be and what's your specific target approach going to be that you're going to take. And then you can then have multiple startups addressing things. And as a fund, you can invest in multiple startups doing different things, and which is why we can have more than one green investment. And so I think that's just sort of a general point I wanted to make. But in terms of other initiatives, so this is, yes, there are other business models. So one that I personally find interesting is on the carbon offsetting side. But there's also sustainable investing in terms of enabling individuals to invest in sustainable companies. So there's companies that basically go off this idea of invest in what matters to you. And they basically a bit like a Robin Hood, but for sustainable investing. So they allow people to make an impact by investing their savings or like a Stash Invest, for example. So investing their savings in sustainable businesses. And this is quite interesting. They sort of start by asking what's important to the users, whether it's clean revenues or, a certain water usage or even leadership criteria. And then they track the data of that, the financial data for the last several years, and they can then help you score companies based on their emissions and water usage. They're basically using data to help individuals invest in more sustainable businesses. So I think that's quite an interesting area. We're seeing things in climate risk management as well. So companies that are, for example, helping banks and other institutions measure and address the impact of climate risk. So one specific example I saw was this company that was using an asset level climate value at risk score. So they were basically measuring the financial impact in dollar value of climate risks. So that's, and using that and sharing that data with banks, pension funds, and other organizations. You also have weather insurance, right? That's another fintech angle to green investing, because you could have drought insurance for farmers, you could have rain insurance for small businesses. And then on the offsetting side, which there's obviously, I mentioned the company that does offset evaluation, but there's direct to consumer offsetting and point of sale offsetting as well. So you can track a carbon footprint, you can help them become carbon neutral, and you can also help consumers reduce their footprint to begin with. So discover eco-friendly restaurants, so that their purchase is, when they make the initial purchase, has a smaller carbon footprint. So those are some of the business models we're seeing. And I think those are, to your question, on specific examples of, the plastic in business model. There are lots of some business models we've seen alongside this aspect as well. Yeah.
Christoph Hantschk, you wanted to add something to the ocean plastic and the arguments before?
Yeah, so first of all, I think there is not one issue that is more important than the other. I think both issues like ocean plastics and planting trees against climate change are equally important. And this is why we started with allowing our users to plant trees every time they reuse their bag in a partner store. But I can still recall, before we launched the app, I was on a vacation in Thailand, and I was in a very nice resort. But then on the beach, I actually saw that there's so much plastic, even in this nice resort, which was cleaned. So I started also to, every time I went into the ocean, just try to collect a little bit of plastic. And I also saw other guests in the hotel actually doing that, and imagine doing this in a very nice resort. That showed me there's a lot of potential here. And also, I said we should do something also to help, especially these areas, which are poor areas where there is more plastic floating in the ocean, to reduce the plastic. And it came to me, it's a great fit, because by reusing your good bag, first of all, you're avoiding using a single-use bag. And no matter if this is a paper bag or it's a plastic bag, the CO2 emissions of a paper bag actually are worse than a plastic bag. but you can also leverage your impact by actually collecting more plastic. And it's kind of a good picture in the user's mind to you save the plastic bag, and now you, on top of that, you collect another plastic bag out of the ocean. So for us, this is really important. And in the end, we leave the consumer with the choice most of the time, if they can either get a discount or plant a tree or collect the plastic bag out of the ocean. But I also want to answer Martin's question regarding our business case, because it's directly related to it, and it made a really round picture in the end. Because planting a tree, let me elaborate a little bit on our business case. So currently we provide our customers, which are brands, custom experience as a service that enables them to protect the environment together with their customers and sell our product in their stores or give it away for free if they're a consumer brand. So we are a SaaS company with a physical product. So they pay a yearly fee that ranges from a free plan up to 60,000 euros per year, depending on several factors of service that we provide. And on top of that, we provide them a product that they can sell in their stores with a profit to the consumer. So for the consumer, goodbag is completely free. They buy the bag, and once they have the bag, they can plant trees, collect plastic, and receive discounts that save them money for free and even track their impact in the app. So, and on top of that, our customers, our business customers, they pay for the donations. So either planting a tree or collecting plastic waste out of the ocean. As I mentioned earlier, planting a tree is a little bit more costly than collecting plastic waste out of the ocean. It depends on the amount, of course, but we buy kilograms of plastic and we calculate them down into the equivalent of one plastic bag. And this is basically the price for interactions that our customers pay. Because in the end, what our users give us.
We can't hear you, Christoph. I can't hear you. Christoph, hörst du? Okay. Refreshen of the site is the opportunity. Then I want to ask a question, because of course before COVID-19, the sustainability development about Fridays for Future was a big thing, yes? But now we had COVID, and I doubt whether the consumer are really interested in sustainability. Christoph Hantschk now told it doesn't cost anything for the consumer to have a good bag. And Max, what are your experiences about your clients, and also you're doing advertising also for big companies? Are the consumers really interested in sustainability, or are they really interested in convenience and whatever is connected to it is okay? Or is it just COVID now was a short break and it will come up again as a mass phenomenon in future or in near future? What do you think about it? Doesn't work again. Gerald, what's about your clients?
Again,
are they really?
no.
Oh yes, that's good.
I have to reload my browser, then it works.
Okay.
I think there are several truths here. So the first one is that there are certainly really a huge amount of people that are not interested at all. So they have the main things that the focus on. Is it cheap? Is it good for them, for their own purpose? But what we can see through all our clients is that there is a growing number of people who are interested, so that the brands have to react. Yeah, that's one certain point that is becoming more and more important. So a brand has to, for example, if there were like 5% of people who where the topic was important in the past days, now there are like 20%, and I think brands are listening to the clients, and they have to, and so they are reacting. The second point is that I think that brands have they got their own ambitions. So a brand has to react on their own ambitions, and they have to be a first mover. So they have to be the first mover on something, and their followers will follow. And because of that, brands try to get new areas, get new topics for their storytelling. And I think that could be a new way to get more power on the topic itself. So when brands want to act, they will have a power to achieve more to come to more customers with the topic. So
okay. Christoph, Christian, you wanted to add something. Mastercard also looks at the clients and the developments. Do you think it's a real trend? It's a real mindset which is changing, or is it only an advertising task where, yeah, of course it's important, but not really. And when it's more expensive, then I choose the cheaper product.
I wanted to comment on the statement that sort of the COVID pandemic maybe pushed the climate change a bit off the agenda. I could see that at the end of the day helps a bit with the dialogue, because I think one of the problems with climate change is that we're, as humans, I think we're not very well equipped to anticipate disruptive change that's going to happen in, 20 years or something, or that is geographically also not evenly distributed, right? Because those islands in the Pacific where, small fluctuations, sea level really make a difference, don't really bother us. In Central Europe. So I could definitely see that this pandemic, which is, if you will, maybe a nature catastrophe in super fast forward, that it really builds a bit of sensitivity when it comes how fragile our society and economies are when it comes to nature forces that we don't control, be that a virus, be that climate change, be that all kinds of things. So I would hope that maybe it sort of heightens our sensitivity when it comes to how fragile and how attackable basically we are. So that was my observation, and maybe that's just wishful thinking, but I could see that this is going in this direction. Obviously, I mean, the whole, if you will, Greta thing was a bit pushed of the media agenda, because there were more pressing needs, if you will, short-term. But I think that, the more record summers we have in Europe, the more people feel like Christoph was saying, he's in the nicest resorts and he sees plastic there. I think it's really pushed into our face. And I think really if also a mainstream quality of life suffers, it is a topic there to stay. And I think the more we feel it, the more it gets tangible, the harder it's to ignore.
Yeah, I totally agree with Christian on this. I think the climate, like we were saying earlier, the climate hasn't stopped changing. It may not be on the media agenda at the moment, but ultimately people are still concerned about sea levels rising, financial implications of climate change, wanting to live a more sustainable lifestyle, wanting to reduce your carbon footprint, thinking about how your money is being used. And while there may be lots of considerations on our mind at the moment, this is still important, and it's not something that's been de-emphasized in any way.
But this exactly shows in which situation we are. It's really not 5 to 12, it's after 12, and this is the problem we caused. And of course, it's great that there are a lot of initiatives which kind of end-of-pipe solutions providing to companies who have missed the last decades on acting carefully. I studied environmental policy, and it's the very, very last thing you want to do if something going wrong are end-of-pipe solutions. Of course, it's better than nothing, but as I as well wrote into the chat, we need to stop cutting the trees and not planting them again. We should not go into the ocean collecting the plastic. We need to stop putting the plastic into the ocean. This is the fucking point. And this is what the young people still don't understand. We're giving them opportunity to greenwash themselves. They still will fly around the world and offset the carbon footprint by buying some trees, which will be in nature acting in a full way in 30 years. It's too late for that. Of course, it's a very great that there are initiatives that bring the topic into the light, but this is not the solution. This must be very, very, very clear. This is just really a drop on the hot stone and bringing the society to thinking, but not solving the problems we have caused. So with this approach, we will change nothing.
I think there's something interesting about what you're saying, Christoph, about also the sense of urgency, right? That there needs to be there is a sense of urgency, and that's why there needs to be more that is being done. And I have a personal anecdote about this as well. I think a few years ago, actually, I was talking to a friend, and back then, obviously every year it's getting hotter and hotter, but back then, we got into a heated debate about whether global warming is a real thing or whether climate change is real. And he, as a scientist, or as a physicist, was denying that it's a real thing. And now you're seeing, now today is one of the hottest days here in London, and every year, it's the hottest year. And I think as we also see the personal impact on our lives, it becomes more of a sense of urgency to do something about it as well, I would say. So perhaps that's also something, that's becoming more urgent, and that's why you're seeing more business models around it as well.
Okay.
Absolutely. And for another example that there is happening nothing out there shows, for example, the energy situation in Austria. The last 30 years, electricity production went down from 77% of renewables to 75%. It's going back. The last 30, it's going back. From the whole electricity, 1% in Austria is solar. And this is only the electricity is only a quarter of the whole energy consumption in Austria. So imagine how much solar is contributing to the energy landscape in Austria. And we are one of the best in the world. So you can imagine there's a big way to go, and we have to run.
Then Max can repeat his sentence about the Hut brennt again. Yes. Now I want to change the topic a little bit. Yeah. Okay. Yeah. Right.
Can I make one comment here? And I made a similar comment yesterday in the prep call. I agree with what Christoph said. Right, planting trees is not the solution. Right, it's a mini piece of the puzzle. Right. However, I think we should be careful that we need to strike a balance. We can't condemn those initiatives like tree planting or getting plastic out of the ocean by making the point that they are not sufficient by themselves. Right? We have to acknowledge them as one part of the solution, but obviously not the solution in itself. And there's lots of other things that need to happen to actually address the underlying problems. Yeah, but it's always risky in a way. There's always a risk that we fall into this black-white kind of trap. If something is not like a perfect approach, then we condemn it. But we need to find this space in between where everybody kind of figures out what he or she in his or her role, or each business in their position, can actually contribute. So I'd rather focus on, it's a bit like in the payment discussion where we should stop complaining and start doing things. There's so much reasonable things everyone can do, So it's better to start doing things than keep complaining that it's probably not the perfect measure.
Absolutely. I'm not complaining. I'm just saying that we have really urgent situation here, and most people are not aware about how urgent the situation is really. And in this case, very provocative statements and actions are needed to bring the people out of their seats. And this is the point, and we need to really display and show this to the people, and not giving them excuses and not giving them too much opportunities to greenwash their own minds.
You gave me the keyword, Christoph, Zinganell, about greenwashing. What's greenwashing and what's really green banking? Yeah, because yesterday in the preparation call we also discussed about the Bank für Gemeinwohl, which was not successful, and I looked into Wikipedia, and there I saw that a green bank should be supported by the public, and Bank für Gemeinwohl, I think, was not supported by the public in Austria, and therefore it was not successful. And therefore I doubt a little bit about the consumer and their real mindset towards sustainability, because when the decision makers are not convinced about it, of course it's good when people like Christian Rau and also you all say, okay, sustainability is important and we have to adapt on it and look at it. But on the other hand, you have big bosses who are not looking at this and decide in the old way. It's also very dangerous that the Austrian government now invests into old infrastructure. And in Wikipedia stands that these green banks should invest or have to invest into infrastructure, green or sustainable infrastructure and sustainable technology. And and therefore the big question for me is, what is greenwashing? What is really meant? And is the development in this direction? And of course, I don't want to say it's not good to plant trees. Of course, it is very good. And when it's against, it's really good for our climate. But on the other hand, how can business models like Goodbag or also other business models can be supported to grow more quickly and be successful? Gunita, what do you think? What is about, how do you decide this is greenwashing, this is really a business model? And on the other hand, what do you expect from a government or official side to be changed?
Yeah, so I think it's important to make a distinction between greenwashing and green tech. And for me, greenwashing is basically about when you're trying to market yourself. So more time than you're spending actually minimizing the negative impact on the environment, you're spending more time than that on marketing yourself. And this is because, it's become so popular and such a good thing to basically invest in strategies that tackle ESG factors, right? And so for me, that is greenwashing, when you're doing marketing more than you're doing of an impact. For me, green tech is about when there's a specific, measurable, targeted business model with a positive impact on the environment. And that impact could be measured in different ways. It could be, reduction of greenhouse gases. It could be getting rid of waste and environmentally harmful substances, like the plastic side of things. It could be improving environmental damage by planting trees, conserving natural resources as well to start with. So I think that is, for me, this distinction between the two definitions. And there's a book on this topic called Project Drawdown, and it's basically, it gives 100 solutions to combat global warming. And some of those are very specific targeted things, like having a more plant-rich diet, which can be quite controversial, but also is considered to be one of the ways to be more beneficial to the environment. Then they talk about education of people and specifically they talk about education of women and family planning and stuff like that. So there's so many different ways you can think about solutions to on so many different levels to green, like addressing this issue. But going back to green tech, yeah, I would say it's basically having a specific targeted business model. And here, this is where as investors, we're also really careful. We do a lot of detailed due diligence to avoid any sort of misrepresentation of any kind on a startup being, on how green a startup really is.
Martin, what do you think about the green bank versus greenwashing? As I said before, I think the definition of Gunita was very, very good, saying more marketing than impact. But in Austria, we don't have a green bank. We invited Tomorrow Bank. What do you think about the green banks? Are they really successful in doing what they do? Or is it only in a small business what they are doing, and the traditional banks are the big players for investments into the new technologies?
I think I would say simply the lobby for a green bank currently is not there. I think that's the point. There's a huge interest in, or I don't know how huge it is, to be simple, but when you talk to end consumers in a single room, one-to-one, probably as today discussed, they will say, yes, we think it's better to have a sustainable kind of management of my funds when I put it into somebody else's hand. So I think there are not so many people who would disagree here. The question is, what is it worth for them? So are they willing to take an extra step? It's also a bit like the discussion about meat. Is it good, bad, or how do we handle it? And then you have the industry and millions of people buying simply the cheapest price because they have other problems or they have other interests to do that. So that's why I say the lobby for a green bank needs to come from somewhere else, because people itself do not say we need a new bank. So I don't go out in Austria and say, hey, today I don't want to stay with, I don't name all the banks in Austria that we have. I want to have a new player. That's not how things work in the industry. So there needs to be a kind of, I assume in nowadays, business model where you say, okay, it is attractive for end consumers that are willing to move from the existing product to a new proposition. So this is step one. Second step is there needs to be also a push from authorities or from parts of the industry that say, hey guys, we need to have some type of borderlines to make sustainable banking interesting if it is really an interest of the industry. And I think the core problem is most likely, Christoph knows it from his studies, environmental politics do never work because simply the legislation period of a government is too short to tackle the problem. That's the problem, basically. If you have a government for 30 years, most likely they would simply install measures. But if you have a government for 6 years, 3 years, 1 year, it simply is not attractive to tackle that topic. So therefore, it needs to have initiatives that actually bring the topic towards with a significant number of end consumers to say it is relevant and it needs to be discussed. And this is what we are doing today. I think this is the ground layer work to discuss it, to understand, is it interesting for investors? Is it interesting for schemes, for example? I think we had there some yeses and say, yes, it is relevant. It can be part of our business model. It won't replace most likely all of our existing business models. But the question is, which new products will be built in the next 1, 10, 20 years? And are they built more into the area of sustainability? And I get the feature, it is something that needs to be built up step by step. You cannot most likely tear down the existing products and landscapes and say, you need to be sustainable by now. You are not allowed to invest your funds in X, Y, Z. And I don't see a green bank coming up in Austria, just to close that very quickly. I even don't see a new challenger bank coming up in Austria in the next 3 years, even if they simply want to make money.
For me, it's
Christoph
all about
Zinganell, you wanted to say something? Sorry, yes?
Yes, absolutely. For me, it comes all down to carbon pricing and pricing it all. We can see it now with the low oil price. Oil will be used for energy and producing plastic. and all alternative methods in producing renewable energy or producing sustainable packaging will be competing with exactly this, nothing more, nothing less. And this is what we see on our market. We will be always compared with solar energy to alternative, the conventional fossil fuel energy, and same on the packaging industry. So this needs to be simply changed, that everything will come automatically. We need to have it on the economical scale. Even because now at the moment, solar energy is the cheapest energy in Austria. Maybe not the best one to store, but to produce already. And as already mentioned, it's 0.25% of our production portfolio.
Okay. Now I want to come back to PF19 and the initiative and the payment pioneers, because the question is, what can we do with sustainability, or what can be our contribution to sustainability? And that I would like to have the closing words about this. When you think, Max, about all the discussion, and yesterday and the day before, you were always the vision maker. What do you think can PF19 contribute to sustainability in payment, or what can the payment pioneers contribute to this topic?
I hope you can hear me. Yes, super. So in general, one of our main goals that we want to achieve with the Payment Festival of PF19 is that we bring people together, that we bring certain areas together that are that maybe in the past didn't talk that much. So, and when we try to achieve this thing of the collaboration, I think there are many aspects that we have to bring together. Not only the innovation things, not only the how can Europe strengthen through payment or new payment innovations? Also, how can we as a society bring more sustainability into the area of payment? And I think the only way is to collaborate, to talk with each other as we did today. And I hope today we got a small impulse on that. And as I always say, the Hut brennt. It's really urgent that we act. So not only collaborating by talking, collaborating by acting is one of the most important things.
Christian Rau, Mastercard does many projects on sustainability. Of course, it's a tech company. Payment is in the focus. But what do you take with from this discussion, and which impulses did you get by this exchange?
I think for us, of course, we have our own environmental footprint, with data centers and everything. But I think one key leverage that we have is that we are directly tied to consumer behavior in terms of what they buy and what they consume. I think one of the mental advantages we have is that financially speaking, we already provide transparency to consumers what their behavior means, right? You see your money's gone, you see where it's going. And initiatives like the economy or things like we do with Bank also help us to take these billions of touch points that we have in terms of payment to raise awareness. I think that's the first thing. Of course, we do all our small things, with the tree planting and other things. But I think in terms of what can we contribute, it's more the lever that we have in terms of connecting to these almost 3 billion people that use our products in one way or another, and make them aware what consumption means, not only in financial terms, but also in environmental terms.
Thank you. Gunita, what do you think about this discussion, and what do you take with you into next steps with Speedinvest?
I think my key takeaway is that there is a need to do something about it. And I think we have a great group of people around the sort of panel here, fishbowl here today, because we as investors and businesses have a role that we can play around creating this change, right? And in terms of sustainable fintech and sustainable tech and green tech, whatever you want to call it. But it's a role that we specifically have to play. And I think for Speedinvest, basically, it's a matter of continuing to assess and give sustainable fintech and sustainable tech startups an equal chance to other startups, and not give them any more or less of benefit, but sort of as we continue to sort of assess them based on their targeted business model and how they're what their commercial viability is, as well as their environmental impact.
Christoph Hantschk, you told me in the preparation that you had an account for you, or you did a study about the green account for your clients. Was it positive for you in the study, or wasn't it so, or was it neutral? And what are your takeaways from our discussion today?
Do you hear me now? Yeah, perfect. So yeah, we did not for our users. In 2017, we did a study regarding also payment with the bag and about the green bank account. And the study was very interesting. I mean, by the time we were thinking actually starting also another product, being a green bank account together with banking provider, because like getting a banking license is not the way to start to challenge a bank. I think many startups have shown how that works. The main results of the study were there was a lot of interest. The payment or the willingness to pay was 10 euros per month for a bank account that collects your green points, and that will allow you to donate these green points to several projects. So having a choice there, not only planting trees. But what we also found out during this study was that the consumers in the end, they value the security of a existing bank more than the sustainability factor. And that was like 3 years ago. This might slightly have changed, but I think what's pretty clear, and I think this is also what we came to in part of this discussion, to the conclusion that we came in part of this discussion, is that in the end, you need to provide the basics of a payment product or a bank product to the consumer, and there can be no compromise on that. But in the long run, I truly believe that making sustainability part of this model is beneficial for the business in the future, and this will also drive to the commercial success of the banks, or the green banks, so to speak. And I think it's way too early to judge where these challenger banks are going. I think even for the non-green challenger banks, we still don't know how things will plan out in the long run. It's a super interesting development there, and I'm very curious how this will turn out. I mean, I'm very optimistic, but we'll see, of course. I mean, the banking sector is a very hard sector to disrupt. And regarding the discussion, I think regarding that we know that 9 out of 10 consumers want brands to support them to become more sustainable. I think it's good to embed sustainability critically in the model that you offer your customers. And yeah, in the end, it's a business decision. Like Gunita said, a startup should not be judged by its sustainability aspect, but by the market that it can reach and the consumers and users that they can win. But I'm truly convinced that sustainability in the long run and the middle run, probably, like I'm talking about the decade or maybe like 2 decades from now, will be the winning factor. And this is what Christoph also said. There is no other choice, and it's already too late. And if we don't there is studies saying that the difference between 1.5 and 2 degrees is basically human survival. And I mean, this is how it goes. And in the end, the consumers and the users and the individuals, we ourselves have to make the decision, and we will drive the market. And this is why I'm still optimistic about making the right decisions as consumers, and education is key to that. So we need to never stop educating people, and even during COVID, we need to pay attention to this climate crisis. So yeah, with these words, I want to end. I think it's about acting, and it's about, as a consumer and as a business person, making the right decision towards a sustainable future, because it's the only future.
Thank you, Christoph. A short input, a short closing word of Christoph Zinganell. We have to look at the time because we close immediately. Christoph, short input, please.
First of all, the term sustainability was created in Austria. It was created in an economical way. It was always an economical term. Now it's getting a marketing ecological term. Let's shift it back to the economical department. Every business should be sustainable in these 3 pillars: social, economical, and ecological. It's coming out of the forestry scene, and it was very obvious because the forest workers could see immediately, if we cut out more trees than we plant and they grow big, then it's not a sustainable business from an economical way. They could see it this time. Let's shift it back into the economical department. We're using this word here as well only in the context, or mostly in the context of ecological. This is simply wrong.
Second point.
Optimist. Second thing, my closing words. I'm not a pessimist. Maybe it could turn out that way in this discussion. I'm an optimistic realist. Planting trees is really great, but not cutting them is even greater. But we need to get a situation that not cutting them is economical, more beneficial than planting them. Now planting them, this is the point that's up.
Thank you very much, Christoph. Now we can come back to the initiatives of PF19. And first I want to hand over to Gerald, last word, and then Martin, and then I'm closing the session. We can't hear you. No. You have to reset the site, I think. Then Martin, I hand over to Martin.
Okay. Can you hear me? Cool. Okay, I do a quick one for Jared.
Gerald, bitte Mute stellen. We hear you. We hear an echo. Now let's try again. Martin.
Okay. Very good. So one key takeaway, we need to focus in the peer groups the topic and bring it up, because I don't think the initiative will come from another. So that's step number 1. The second thing is what I would like to understand more is get into the business model kind of side to understand where the place for this topic is. And what we didn't discuss today is before COVID-19, it was a huge topic and it was part of almost every discussion. I don't know, and this is something I would like to examine and rediscuss in November at the Payment Festival. Is it coming back? Is it there? Has it never gone away? The topic of, I still call it sustainability in the economic area. And for me, I take away, sometimes people trust their brewery more than a bank. I like that. It's interesting.
Okay, then I say thank you to all of you for the discussion and the exchange about sustainability. I took your point, Christoph, that we speak about economy. That's a good takeaway for me. And yeah, that was the fishbowl too. And tomorrow we will discuss about digital. We will discuss about digital currencies, and then we will have lunches again about around the summer. And in November we plan to have the Payment Festival, but it's not sure whether it can be done on the one hand due to COVID-19, on the other hand because the funding is not fixed yet. But we will see. Maybe it's possible, and then we will do so. Otherwise, we will have lunches, exchanges like we had today, and Payment Festival 2021. And I say thank you to you. We will connect about in the social media and so on. I will also contact you for some videos, for some statements to those I didn't do so, but Gunita and Christoph, we did. We had a video statement by you, and it's really good. And yeah, and in this sense, I want to close the session, and the last word has Gerald, when it's possible with the technique equipment.
Can you hear me again?
Yes.
Excellent. This happens when you run out of battery on your AirPods, right? So also thanks from my side. I'm not going to comment on the subject itself again because we're running out of time. My closing statement is just to thank everyone for participating. I learned a lot because there was a lot of different aspects of the subject that were discussed today. Thanks everybody for sharing your opinions and not shying away from controversial statements. I think that what makes these rounds of discussion actually rewarding for the participants, and I also hope for the people who were listening and watching. So without further ado, thanks everyone. Enjoy the rest of your day, and I hope to see many of you soon. Bye.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Thanks, bye.
Bye-bye.
Thank you. Bye.